when they are gathering for their tailgate party in the mall parking lot. We've got a couple of seasoned activists who've already said that they're willing to go over and take some pictures of license plates and these are people who are willing to do this. They're people who are seasoned.
What we're organizing is an organization from coast to coast that is going to address every level of government, that's going to address sexual indoctrination in the schools, that's going to bring the rabbis and the priests and the imams, and they're going to come together without obviously infringing on each other's beliefs. We're going to come together and say, hey, wait a sec here. We're going to work together to protect Canada's kids.
That we're rising, that this is far more than just like a far-right transphobic protest. They are fundamentally racist. They're fundamentally anti-union. They are fundamentally queer and transphobic.
On Wednesday, September 20th, in cities all across the country, the nation's parents and the nation's children are staging a walkout and then a protest. Now, this is not the sort of protest and walkout that we may be familiar with, the ones in favor of climate justice or in favor of Pride Week and the ability to use the washroom of the other biological sex, the one you identify as, but the one you're not. No, this is against the sexual indoctrination of the nation's children in our classrooms. Parents have had enough. Students have had enough. And finally, after 4 decades of creeping sexual indoctrination, going completely unabated and unopposed, parents are fighting back. And you know what that means. If you oppose sexual indoctrination of children, you are a fascist, according to the mainstream media and the activists on the other side. Teachers' unions are organizing in Zoom calls against parents.
And it is really scary. It is extremely similar as to what has been happening in the U.S. And we are very, very worried about what could be coming next.
Where we know that we're better than them. We also don't have to worry too much about putting our members and our comrades in unsafe situations, because when we get numbers, we're going to keep each other safe.
Flight, fight, or fright. And so let's give them some fright on September 20th, so that on September 21st till whatever, that they're working on the flight tactic.
I show a very heavy many people on this call that have a lot of experience in dealing with this type of thing that can help us keep each other safe and be strong in the response that we're doing as well to these hate mongers.
But if somebody for some reason gets picked up, it would be good that if they could have a 1-800 number that they could write on their arm or something like that, so that they know they've always got a lawyer that they can call. So that would be useful. I'm not saying it will happen. We're going to try and stop it from happening. But we have some seasoned activists who have been used to that in the past. And they wanted to make sure that we had that option if we had.
But parents and activists in favor of parents' rights are not going to be intimidated. The protests are going forward, and Rebel News will be there to cover it. Now, joining me now is Camille El Sheikh. He's the organizer of the Million Man March in favor of the nation's children. He joins me now. Take a listen. Tell me, why did you start this? Because if you pay attention to the mainstream media, you are not a free-thinking man who cares about children and parents' rights, but your mind has been colonized by the far right, if you listen to that.
Well, I mean, that's, our prime minister seems to suggest that. But how did it come? You know what? I don't want to take credit for all the noble people in the back end, their leaders, their managers, they're working with us collectively. It's happened organically. This has been a battle for all Canadians. And so it started off in early June when Christian Canadians came and asked Muslims and Jews and you name it, Buddhists to come, and Muslims responded to the call because they're like, you know what, there's a verse in the Quran that says there's no compulsion in religion. So we didn't want to offend. But we were we were cringing every time a Canadian is targeted, a white Canadian is targeted and all that stuff. Left a sour taste in our mouth. And then, we got to a point, Sheila, where we just had to say something. And we have to unite Canadians because this affects every Canadian home. And we got in The first protest was in Carling. Save Canada had organized that. We came in, we answered the call. And then the Muslim group, where you saw my speech on June 13, where I was talking about Christians and Muslims and whites and, that kind of stuff. And I made a call for unity. That one was a massive protest that was organized by Muslims that brought, Christians in. And then there was that bromance that's happened actually, non-professionally where, Canadians are just one creed, but now we're working collectively to protect Canada's kids. And I didn't organize that protest either. I just was invited and I came in. And, they wanted me to speak a few words as a 25-year activist. I got recognized and stuff like that. And so I went up and spoke. But I spoke on behalf of the mothers, the heartbroken mothers' hearts, the fathers, the concerned children, and all that kind of stuff. And it's funny. People wanted to say something. They just weren't quite sure how to articulate that. I was just looking in the hearts and minds of Canadians, and I said what everybody wanted to say. I just, got lucky and it went viral.
Yeah, but it's really remarkable to see how this is, like you are doing your best to organize it, but this is growing organically in cities all across the country. As journalists here at Rebel News, we know it's our duty to cover this fairly because we don't trust the mainstream media to do that.
Yes, and I appreciate what you guys are doing.
On Wednesday, we're deployed all across the country. I mean, I wish I had a team twice the size so that we could cover this as adequately as possible and in the way that it deserves. But I mean, we're really stretched thin just to cover this organic movement that has grown from the grassroots up, where parents feel like politicians just aren't listening to them, unless, of course, if you live in Saskatchewan, perhaps New Brunswick. You are
that's the benchmark.
You are giving a voice to the people, I think, in the same way the convoy did, where the convoy stood up and said, no more. You're not crazy for feeling this way. Let's take our
they did a great job trying to unite the country. But
and I think that's what you're doing too. Is the mainstream media, the liberals, they want us not talking to each other. They want us divided. They want us to focus on our differences.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm saying, I'm trying to translate what I've said in my speeches on the ground and trying to orchestrate that into a seismic organization from coast to coast to be a cloak for all Canadians. I don't care what your political views are. My prerogative is to protect your political views, is to protect your kids, is to protect your freedom of speech. You may not agree with me on certain things, but you need to understand that Thomas Jefferson says freedom is the ability to agree and disagree freely. And it's got to be said peacefully. And I believe in idea meritocracy, where we use radical truth to have a beautiful dialogue. And that's what democracy is all about, Sheila.
Now, I want to ask you, because you're organizing this movement and you told me off camera, you sort of want to make it like Pride, where it doesn't go away.
It's not going away. I'll tell you that now.
Where this isn't just a one and done thing, because the encroachment of the state and activists onto parents' rights, that's never going away.
Some people are like, oh my God, we got to address this protest. And you saw that Zoom call, the plant by the government. And I issued a warning.
When they are gathering for their tailgate party in the mall parking lot, we've got a couple seasoned activists who've already said that they're willing to go over and take some pictures of license plates and these are people who are willing to do this. They're people who are seasoned and make sure that they know that they're being watched, that they're not doing this in secret, that people are noticing what they're up to.
What we're organizing is an organization from coast to coast that is going to address every level of government, that's going to address sexual indoctrination in the schools, that's going to bring the rabbis and the priests and the imams, and they're going to come together without obviously infringing on each other's beliefs. We're going to come together and say, hey, wait a sec here. We're going to work together to protect Canada's kids, and everybody can go to their synagogues and their churches and their mosques and do whatever they please or they deem necessary. Under the Constitution, you have the right to religion. You have the right to congregate with people of similar religion, and you have the right to engage with the media about your religion. Now, for whatever reason, we have one minority group which is composed of 1.76% of the Canadian populace, which is the Pride community, that's being accommodated and trumping every other group in Canada. That's not democratic. Okay? Now, again, I don't want to paint every one of them with the same brush, and I'm very careful to do that. Okay? But what I'm saying is a majority of them so far have been calling us parents fascist. I resent that. Why are you calling us fascist for saying I don't want my 5-year-old child to see your gay porn in the school? You're reading from a drag queen. You're dressed in a dress. You're a guy dressed in a dress, drag queen, and you're saying a pornographic story to a 5 or 6-year-old kid when they should be playing marbles or with Barbies. When they're 18, they want to do that. They can do whatever they like, this is a freedom of choice here. But let kids be kids, and I'm going to trust Canada's parents to parent Canada's kids. The government should just be governing and serving Canadians. And if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I did want to talk to you about that Zoom call of union activists organizing against parents. Yeah. It was wild. Within the first 30 seconds, I mean, I couldn't have created a mockery of a Zoom call of what I think activists on the other side were like. Just everybody had a pride flag background or a trans flag background, all their pronouns in their names underneath.
Excellent day to have allies together for a very important conversation. So thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. My name is Rob Halpin. I'm the Executive Director at the Ontario Federation of Labour. We're going to get started here momentarily. We've got a pretty full agenda as well to discuss today, of course, about our organizing around a counter-protest for these events that are occurring on September 20th and a few days thereafter, quite frankly, as well.
Calling parents fascists. They literally called parents fascists.
Yes.
The fascists are organizing in the streets. I'm a researcher at Carleton, and my focus is fascism in Canada and the signs that I've seen that we're rising, that this is far more than just like a far-right transphobic protest. They are fundamentally racist. They're fundamentally anti-union. They are fundamentally queer and transphobic. And it's just a matter of time before they come to us. And the only way, the best way that the fascists have been stopped in the last 100 years has been when we unite in massive numbers in the streets.
And thinking that they know best.
That was a threat, by the way. That's a threat.
Yeah. I want to ask you about that. I always suspected they were very organized on the other side with regard to what happens in schools. It was not, I never ever thought that it was just one teacher here, one teacher there. I thought there was an organized movement in the background. I just never saw the evidence of that the way I saw here. Were you as stunned by what you saw as me, or you're probably more cynical about this stuff?
They were calling parents fascist for trying to protect their kids.
Yeah. And
that is incredibly disrespectful to the rest of Canada's parents. Canada's heterosexuals comprise of 98.3% of the Canadian populace. So you're upsetting a very big crowd. And what you're also doing is, we need to be as big as them. Oh, so you're saying the Pride campaign is failing in Canada because you're needing to organize. You got $1.5 billion in the past 8 years from our Prime Minister. So you're saying you got to recollect to match our energy level to protect our kids? So that's one other thing. So it's an example of them attesting to failure. Okay, of their Pride campaigns. Although they're all over the place. There's Pride Day, Pride Year, Pride Month, Pride Sidewalks, Pride phone apps.
Pride
season. It's as if it's not enough. Pride season, Pride flags, Pride Starbucks cups. And yesterday I was drinking an iced tea. It had Pride logo and it says "Love is Love" on it. And I didn't even pay attention. So after all that, your pride is all over the place. You want to disrupt this event by calling a counter protest. I will consider that a threat to our freedom of expression. And I've said that in a video on TikTok, and I've said that officially, that if you are looking to counter this event for moms and dads, teachers, engineers, just parents pulling their kids out of school, a peaceful protest, and you're looking to counter that, not only will we be countering, obviously we're going to counter your, adult males in skirts reading gay porn to kids. We're going to counter every project you do in the country because we didn't want to insult you. You had a 40-year honeymoon. We didn't want to, we wanted to respect your views, although we disagreed with them. Okay. Because I'm heterosexual. I only have one male, one female in my head. In your head, there's 500 pronouns. I respected your 500 pronouns because you were my subordinate when I managed 3,000 people. I respected you, but now you're telling me you're not respecting what goes on in my head. And that is a threat to our movement. Now, I'm giving them a chance. If you're looking to counter, expect Pride festivals and every Pride event to get a counter. You want to go down that road? Do you really want to open that can of worms? And I said, and I told them to look into my eyes. This is a peaceful protest. We're not looking to oppress. Why are you still vilifying us and painting us as taboo? It's unacceptable.
I think this, especially this week, I think it is the biggest news story in the country, what you're doing, which means the mainstream media is going to do their best to ignore it. But it's really fascinating to see how this movement is building as a labor of love, because you are up against a
Absolutely.
very well-funded, well-organized side, and the other side of this has a lot of our money in their pockets to go after parents.
We're trying to keep it nonpartisan. I know some liberal MPs, which are close friends of mine, that disagree with Justin Trudeau, but they won't say anything, right? Come on, come down. If you're a PPC candidate, come down. If you're conservative, I don't care. You want to come down and you want to walk and then you want to use it as an election platform later on, you go right ahead. This movement should be likened to the Canadian flag. You see this movement, it's no different than the Canadian flag. You see this movement, it's no different than Terry Fox. Everybody likes Terry Fox. You should look at this movement the same way. You should look at, this movement as Whistler, BC, as the Calgary Stampede, as Canada's Parliament buildings, as the Rideau Canal. That's what this movement is. And that's why I'm saying it's non-partisan. You want to run for election afterward as a candidate for the Conservatives? You can use this movement and say, I work for this movement, just like Pride. Pride right now, the NDP virtue signals to them. The Conservatives virtue signal to them. The PPCs, the Liberals, you name it. We are that movement too, and we are the other opinion. We are the straight tide, pretty much.
Camille, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview, and thank you so much for the work that you do on behalf of the nation's
My pleasure.
It's a real joy to see a counterbalance.
Thank you very much.
The out-of-control activism over the last 40 years.
Well, thank you for covering this, Rebel News. I've seen a lot of your work, and thank you very much. And there's a lot of independent journalists trying to cover this, and guess what? It's building organically, so people are coming together, and it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be a beautiful day on Wednesday.
If you'd like to sign our Rebel News petition against sexual indoctrination of the nation's children, please go to stopclassroomgrooming.com.